Hi, everyone, and welcome to the third part in this series where I go over how to solve a Rubik's Cube using the beginner's method outlined by Felix Zemdegs on his website, cubeskills.com. And so, in the first two steps, we solved the bottom layer, right? So we got the edges first, then we did the corner pieces. Now the entire bottom layer is matched up, and it matches the middle center pieces of the sides next to it. And so that's steps 1 and 2 is doing that. Step 3 is moving on from the bottom layer into the middle layer. So how you solve the middle layer is you want to make sure that the pieces in between the center pieces, so these edge pieces right here, these middle layer edges they're called, you want to make sure that they match the center pieces next to them. So right here we need to have an orange side right here and a blue side right here, and that edge piece would go in the middle right here, and then that would match. You do that for all 4 edge pieces, and then you have the middle layer edges solved. All right, so here we go. So we have 3 steps to do, and then we choose between 1 or 2 algorithms, and then there's one exception that we need to know as well. So the 3 steps are this. The first step is you look at your top layer, and you need to locate a middle edge piece that is in the top layer. So we have our top layer, and for example, we have this red and green piece. Now, this red and green piece needs to be moved between the red and green center pieces, right? So it needs to go right here, right? So we have our red centerpiece, our green centerpiece, and this red and green edge piece needs to go between the 2 of those, okay? So here's how you do that. Step 1 is just to find it. So we just did that. We found a piece in the top layer that needs to be moved to the middle layer. Okay. So the second step is to take this piece here and match up the front-facing side of this piece with the center piece below it. So here we have a red and green piece, and this red right now doesn't match the center piece, right? It's red and green. So you just need to rotate it, and now this red and green piece, the red facing front, matches the center piece below it. Okay, so that's step number 2. Step number 1, find a piece in the top layer that needs to be moved to the middle layer. Step number 2, line it up so the edges match with the center piece below it. Okay, and now before we do our algorithm, there's a third step to do, and that's to figure out which direction is this piece going to be moving. Is it going to be moving to the left or to the right? Right? And if it's moving to the left, we do one algorithm. If it's moving to the right, we do a different algorithm, the right algorithm. So you look at your cube, and when you're looking at the piece you just oriented, you'll notice it either needs to go to the right or to the left in order to be where it needs to be. So when I'm looking at my cube, in this case, from my perspective, it needs to be moved to the right. And so I will do the right algorithm, the algorithm where it moves it to the right. And that algorithm is U, R, U prime, R prime, U prime, F prime, U, F. And now look, we have our red and green piece in place, okay? Now, the other case is where you have to move it to the left, and you just use the left algorithm. So we have here, I'm going to repeat the steps. And when I repeat the steps here, and I just found one that needs to use the left algorithm. So look at this red and blue piece in the front. So I just noticed here, I found step number 1. Step number 2, step number 1 is to find a piece in the top layer that needs to be moved to the side layer, okay, to the middle layer. So this red and blue piece needs to be moved right here. And so I matched it up. So step number 2 is to match it up so it matches below it. And I did that. And now step number 3 is to figure out which direction it's moving. So when I look at this from my perspective, it needs to move to the left, right? So once again, I'm not sure if the camera reverses this or if you can see it the same direction I do, but from my perspective here, I need to move this piece to the left. So I will use the left algorithm where it moves it to the left. So that algorithm is this, U prime, L prime, U, L, U, F, U prime, F prime. And now look, that red and blue piece is now in place, okay? So those are the 2 different examples. The other thing you would have to do is, if you couldn't find a piece on top that needs to be moved into the middle layer, but the bottom 2 layers aren't solved, So here is an example of that. So we have our first two layers and they're not completely solved, but what we notice is that when we're trying to do step one, which is to find an edge in the top layer that belongs in the middle layer, we can't find any. So we're looking at our top layer and all the edge pieces up here belong in the top, right? They all have yellow in them, which means they need to be on the top, which is the yellow face. So we can't find any pieces that need to move from the top to the middle layer. Okay, so when that's the case, what you need to do is you need to take a top layer edge piece and use an algorithm to put it into this slot. And when that happens, it'll make it'll take out this piece from the middle layer and put it into the top layer. And so basically it will replace these two pieces, right? It'll switch some pieces, right? And then once this middle layer piece is in the top layer, then we can do step number one again, which is to solve, uh, which is to find an edge piece in the top layer. It'll be in the top layer, and then we can orient it and then use the algorithm. Okay, so here's what that would look like using this example. So here, I'm going to look at it this direction, and I want to get this yellow and orange piece. I want to put it inside this side layer here. That way, this side layer piece will now be switched places and it'll be in the top layer somehow. So I have to notice which direction do I need to do in order to put it inside here. Is it going to be moving to the right or to the left? Well, from my perspective, when I'm looking at my cube here, I need to move it to the right. And so I will use the right algorithm, which is U, R, U prime, R prime, U prime, F prime, U, F. And now that piece is now inside the middle layer, and the other piece is now in the top layer. And now that it's in the top layer, we can go through our steps and put it back in, but this time it'll be facing the right way. So, for example, first we found one, it's already up there, then we match it up, and in my direction is looking like it's going to the right, so I do the right algorithm, U, R, U prime, R prime, U prime, F prime, U, F. All right, and now it's in the right place, and the entire first two layers are solved. And so we've actually solved our step here, and we move on to the last layer, which is the next step. So I hope that's helpful. You need to go step by step, and the trickiest case is when you have a piece inside and you just need to replace it with a top layer piece. But getting the hang of that, it's actually pretty straightforward if you follow the 3 steps and then choose which algorithm to use.